nice to be here. I'm Cara Peterson. I'm one of the co-founders of Describe.ai.
And I'm Richard DiBona, the other co-founder. I'm on the tech side.
Oh, yes, and I'm on the marketing side. And we're somewhat unusual co-founders in that we're also married, which is really actually pretty fun, to be honest. So what gave us the idea for Describe AI was actually a personal situation. So what Describe is it's a legal research tool. And we'll dive in a little bit more to why that's an interesting space, and legal tech in general is a really interesting space right now. But we had a personal reason to want to understand a little bit of employment law. And this is a couple of years ago during the pandemic. And found out how difficult it is to actually access this. Neither Rich or I are attorneys. And so it's actually very, very hard to find this information yourself. So at the same time, and Rich will talk a little bit more about this from the technical side, OpenAI was coming out with a summarization tool. Is a couple years ago feels like a really long time ago in AI time, but at the time it was a pretty novel approach. And so Rich, maybe you can explain how you looked at the problem of reams and reams of printed case law and how you could find a better way to look at it than reading books.
Yeah, I mean, this was before ChatGPT, if you could imagine a time before that. And so you couldn't just type your legal question into the chatbot and have it answer you. And so I was reading all the raw law, and it's very hard to read unless you're an attorney. And I was spending nights during the pandemic just reading the law to try to understand it. And then when OpenAI started getting super popular, the end of 2022 or the beginning of 23, as a software engineer likes to try all the latest technologies as they come out, I decided to try their API. And so I took some of this raw case law that I had been reading and ran it through this little utility I wrote to summarize, and was amazed at how well it summarized this complex stuff into easy to understand. And so I started doing it for more and more relevant case law, and then expanded that, why don't I just summarize all the case law in Massachusetts? And so I did that, and then I wrote a thing to search it on the front. And again, this was still to kind of learn the technology and learn AI programming and learn how it worked. And there wasn't a lot of documentation on how to do it or anything. So, and it was about that point that I showed Cara, I'm like, look at this cool little search engine I wrote where you could search case law in Massachusetts. And then, what was your memory of that, Cara?
Right. Well, I very specifically remember. So I have a background in academic public health. I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but I was in the communications and marketing team. And so always been really interested in large societal problems that can be solved with large systemic, system-wide sort of thinking and innovation. And so AI has a lot of potential in that space, which is kind of what gets me up in the morning these days. But as I was walking behind Rich, literally, because he's an engineer, so he's always building something. You never know. He's always, because what he does for work, he also does for fun. We always say he'd be perfectly fine on a desert island by himself as long as he had a laptop and an internet connection. But anyway, so I said, "What are you building now?" And he explained to me how he was, building this thing, and it kept, impressing himself. So he kept adding more to it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, you know how many people need something like this?" So that's kind of where the idea of it becoming more of a business came from. And it is a business, which sometimes people are surprised by. They're like, well, why aren't you just a nonprofit? And so we can talk about that more, but we really feel that even though it could be a nonprofit, and maybe in some ways that's an easier path, there is a whole lot of upside to having businesses that are solving societal problems using AI, because there's still very, very, very good revenue models that can be brought forth there. So, yeah, and it's just been evolving. Where we started is not where we ended up. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and no, I mean, we went in, Jerry, with complete naivete about the market. And so we didn't realize when we started thinking about this new utility that there were just a couple big players that kind of were gatekeepers for the law. And I think if we had known that, maybe we would have been like, oh, maybe we shouldn't bother trying to we're not competing with them, but maybe we shouldn't impinge on their territory. And without knowing about that, we were like, we'll just put this out there and everybody could start searching.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes going in and being naive about your market is a good thing, I would say, is the outcome.
Yeah, but don't keep your naivete for too long, because then it'll get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Rich can talk about that from a technical perspective. But one way to think about it is what parts of the economy or sort of society are very, very labor intensive from like a human capital perspective, meaning like our brains, right? Like, where are people spending a whole lot of time analyzing and sifting and searching and understanding? And law is like a really, really good example of that. So if you think about these judicial opinions that are coming down, or even just sort of statutes and regulations and things like that, interpretation is really the key. Like, there's the letter of the law, but there's how you use it or how you apply it is really human. You need a lot of human brain power to understand that and parse it. So at scale, and you think about this as a global thing, I mean, certainly this is true across the whole world, it's a lot of human effort to do that. And what AI does is allows and again, you can't just take AI out of the box and make this work. Rich can talk about that. Like, this is actually a very difficult engineering problem to solve, but it helps cut through some of that. I guess, and this is going to come out the wrong way, the need for humans in certain parts of it, which means the humans can then be somewhere else doing the client work. So I think the challenge is at scale. How do you build something that works with these gigantic amounts of data? But Rich can talk about that with our, what is it, 100 million rows on our database now, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
More?
I would say that the hard part is just like we started to bite off Massachusetts, as I said, and that's like, I started with like 30,000 opinions or something, and then we were like, why don't we just try to do the whole country? Or I decided to do that without realizing what kind of challenges we ended up with 3.6 million opinions in our database that we've processed and analyzed and summarized. And it took like 18 months of using AI and figuring out how to process that many things. Because at the time, it like processing one took like 12 seconds. And so you think about like, okay, if I process all of them, it's going to take like 14 years. So, at that speed. So you have to figure out like, how can I do a bunch of them at once? Or how can I figure this out so that I could process all these? Because we don't call the LLM on the fly. We decide to make it so that we pre-process everything and just build a search engine around the pre-processed stuff. And that's the 100 million things Cara was talking about. So those were the challenges, is just managing the vast amounts of data that we ended up processing. And in the long run, it ended up being a good thing that we went through that process, but that was definitely difficult.
Right. And the subtlety, like, it's not that different than maybe it's a high risk or high importance kind of outcome, right? So if you're using AI or big data sets or whatever to, recommend a restaurant to go to, or a type of hotel or whatever, I mean, of course that's important to the person making the purchase, and the better match you can get, or the better recommendation, that's really important, but it's not life or death, right? And so you think about like AI being used for medical imaging or things like that, like this quite literally is life or death. So legal is somewhat in the same space, where the results can be very impactful. And that's why we ended up making a shift to really being a tool that's aimed at legal professionals. It's not really aimed at just sort of the general market, even though people can use the free tool, anyone can use the free tool to do research. Our paid tier is specifically for legal professionals, because there's only so much you can do with just the information if you don't have the training. So it's kind of similar to someone looking at, a mammogram or whatever results. Like there's maybe some processes that the AI helps with, but then you still need that human decision maker to figure out what the action needs to be. The natural language search is really interesting. We didn't talk about that yet because, like, if you think about the traditional, and if there's any attorneys or people who went to law school listening, that the Boolean search and the whole like way that you'd have to know very specific sort of strings of words and things like that. Like the natural language search opens up a very different way to talk to the law, right? And there's a lot of chatbots out there that are just kind of wrappers for ChatGPT, and that's a whole separate conversation. But if you have a good data set that you can query like that, it gives you some really interesting feedback. But Rich, tell the audience a little bit about why you added Boolean search back in. I think this one's interesting for the AI aficionados out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we put this tool out with where you could search for things, and like if you search for if let's say you don't know legal terms and you just search for like someone made my mother change her will, it'll bring up results for undue influence, which is a legal term for it. And you don't have to know undue influence, but now you know it after you use the tool, and it makes those relationships for you. But once we moved into the professional sphere, we got a lot of feedback. Like, I'm used to searching this way. Can you make it so that I could search for keywords and Boolean searches and ands and ors and quotes and all the things like that? So we actually had to build back in an index of all the words in every opinion and build a traditional search back in so that people could search in both ways. So that's is that what you're referring to, Cara?
Yeah, and it's kind of like listening to what our customers said they wanted. Even if we're like, what, Boolean search, there's AI, you don't need it. It's like, nope, that's how they search, is what they're used to. Like, don't shove AI down people's throats sometimes. Like, even though if there's AI in the process, it doesn't need to always be like, I don't know,
front and center.
You have to listen to what people want. And if they search in a different way, then you need to give them that too. I'll start with a challenge, and then maybe Rich can talk about the opportunities. So folks may have remembered this, but early on, which is like, 18 months ago or 2 years ago, not that long ago, when people were using probably ChatGPT and other things like that for working on their briefs and things like that, they were hallucinating cases. So they would be citing cases that did not exist. And I think my favorite example was somebody cited a case that was in the future. So that is not something you should cite because it literally doesn't exist and hasn't happened yet. So of course, that's what AI does. It gives you very convincing answers to things that sound real. And so people didn't really know that, and we've learned a lot. But it does cause it kind of highlights one of the issues or challenges in legal research or in legal space in general, is that, like we were talking about before, the stakes are really high, so mistakes are very costly, right? And there's certain ethics rules, and putting in a brief that doesn't have that has fake cases is like a big deal, and you get sanctioned, you can get in trouble. So there is a fear, and a rightly placed fear or concern about how to ethically and safely use AI for your practice, right, or for what you're trying to do. So we haven't necessarily helped ourselves as a legal tech community, where we don't have, this is starting to change, but really meaningful benchmarks or ways for people to look at the tools and understand which ones are quality and which ones aren't. So there's just that, but that's going to go away. And that's already starting to go away, where there will be ways that people can trust and vet and understand what they're doing. So. But that said, humans make mistakes too. So one of the things is yes, AI may hallucinate and make mistakes, but so do people, right? So do first-year associates or whatever. So it's just kind of like getting over those big attention, like headline-grabbing stories about like, oh no, this hallucinated case, and not letting that dampen maybe the judiciary or other people influential, like ABA or other associations of attorneys, see AI is too dangerous.
Kind of like self-driving cars. If there's one fender bender and everybody freaks out.
Right. So, it's that whole kind of interplay of self-regulation versus, rules and regulations that are going to be put forth. So we'll see. But people just need to be responsible. But there's so much upside to what AI could do in the legal space that we just hope it doesn't get overregulated so that it kind of shuts down innovation. But that's from the broader picture. How about you, Rich, from the tech side?
Yeah, I mean, from the opportunity side, like we looked at what attorneys need, like, and they're in these tools that are hundreds of dollars a month and all that, and
Or more.
we've never actually used those tools. We kind of try to do things fresh. We know what they do, but we don't. We kind of want to do things.
Purposely don't look at them because we don't want to know. We don't want to know. We want to.
But we know that for some of the data that they had, that they have human editors that analyze legal cases, and they hire like thousands of human editors, and they read through cases and pull out these facts and pull out the issues that the cases are talking about. And so what we did is we used AI to do a lot of that. So we made our own like AI human editors that would analyze every case and pull out what the cases are talking about, and pull out when a case talks about another case, is it overruling it? Because that's an important thing to lawyers. Like, is a case overruled, or can you still use it in your argument or not? So I think that was the biggest opportunity that comes to my mind, is that we're able to use AI to do these types of things that human editors had to do. The AI doesn't get bored of reading through these things 24/7 for months and months,
And unless we sound like we're, like, oh, let's just fire all the lawyers, like, it's actually the opposite. Because when you think about how much unmet need there is, and I'll try not to get on my access to justice soapbox, but, it's really, really rough out there in terms of people who need legal services and can't get them. For people who are under the poverty line, it's 92% of legal problems go unaddressed. I mean, the numbers are staggering. And even for middle class Americans, and I'm sure it's the same globally, it can be 60-70% of legal issues.
On the civil side, you don't get a lawyer, only on the criminal side.
Right.
So you're kind of on your own if something
Right.
happens to you.
And these things can be very impactful. It can be about your children, or about, your job, or all kinds of things. So the idea here isn't that, oh, great, we can get rid of humans so we can just, have law firms can make more money or whatever. It's like, no, it's that so they can be freed up from the minutia work, which is extensive in law, and focus on the high touch, value work of working with people and helping them solve their problems. So we think that even just enabling attorneys with AI doesn't mean you need attorneys less. It means they can have more meaningful work, and hopefully have less burnout and a better quality of life too, because law is a tough profession mentally on a lot of people's resilience, in that space. So. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have to show you my bracelet. So this bracelet, this says Team MA. It's maybe is it backwards, but that's okay. It says Team MA. And then it says Boston Unique. So the reason I wear that everywhere is because I'm really a Boston fangirl. The Boston ecosystem is really special. And I can say that you don't have to live in Boston to be part of the Boston ecosystem. That's like, it's kind of a state of mind, right? So to me, it means we're obviously world-class education, brilliant people, just a beacon for science and discovery, and biotech and technology and law and just everything. But obviously we have these amazing universities, and we have amazing community colleges, and kind of the whole gamut. I think the number is like 45 colleges or something within the Boston metro region. But so there's that. But all the innovation isn't just happening in these elite institutions, it's happening everywhere. So we are really well positioned to lead in AI, I think, and especially in ethical, socially responsible, and sort of human in the loop type AI. So I get very, very excited about this ecosystem. And Boston, if you haven't been here, I'm not a native Bostonian myself. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, which is very different, right? But, you can kind of have the impression that we're maybe elitist or we aren't welcoming. And honestly, it's kind of the opposite, especially in the AI group. There's just so many cool events and things happening. So if you're interested in AI in this space, like literally every night of the week, you could go out and meet people and do cool stuff. It's just super energetic. I love it so much here that I started my own podcast. Doesn't compete with this podcast. It's called Building AI Boston, and we are basically celebrating what makes this area so unique. But we're also talking about it in a way that's like you don't have to be an expert. Like a lot of people do worry, like I shouldn't be talking about AI. Probably not people listening to this show, but they feel intimidated by it and worried about it, and we don't want people to get left behind. So we kind of are like, let's open it up. Like you don't have to be an MIT professor to be like talking about AI. You can be anybody, right? So very like Goodwill Hunting kind of thing. That said, I will give a little feedback to Boston.
Constructive.
Loving constructive criticism. We don't need to worry about Silicon Valley. We don't need to worry about New York. Like we don't need to compete. We should be ourselves. But one thing I think we do here that we could maybe think about how as an ecosystem we could improve on is being a little too conservative with a small c, in that we move slowly. Sometimes we're a little slow with capital. We're a little slow with recognizing maybe founders who are not just straight out of one of the elite universities. So I would just say the challenge I would say to Boston is know that about ourselves. Know that that's one of our sort of headwinds, and that we can continue to do things that we do to sort of be inclusive and be. AI is too fast to sit around thinking about it and perseverating all the time. We need to kind of get out of our own way. So that's my take on Boston. But I love it here. I would never move, even though most of our advisors are in California. I'm not moving the company to California. I love Boston. So that's my take. Recognize and admit and be comfortable with addressing what you don't know, right? Because you may be brilliant, you may be a brilliant AI, engineer or software, whatever you would say, AI expert. You may be a great data engineer like Rich. You may be a marketing expert, whatever it is. But no matter how smart you are, there's a whole lot of stuff you don't know. And other people in this ecosystem do. So find your weaknesses and find people that can help you with that. Like you don't have to do everything yourself. That's a road to danger. So, but literally, if you start going to these events in Boston, you will find the lid for your pot very quickly. So get into the ecosystem. Even if you hate networking, do it anyway.
I like the events because I get to go and talk shop. Like there's always somebody willing to talk about, like there's not a lot of people to talk about down in the weeds AI programming on a day-to-day basis, but you go to these events and maybe it's somebody who's doing the same type of thing, but on the manufacturing side or some non-competitor. You could talk about like, how'd you solve this issue? And they'll be like, oh, you were dealing with that same thing. And you could kind of talk shop without giving away any competitive stuff because they're, so there's always somebody in another vertical you could talk to, and maybe in the same vertical, maybe you don't care. But yeah.
And just because I feel a little guilty for the constructive criticism, now I'm going to give some more love to Boston. So we're super collaborative, right? And there was a group that came out from Silicon Valley they were coming out to kind of do looking into creating some networking groups here and stuff. And one of the things that they commented on was how collaborative and sort of non-competitive it was in Boston, and how different that felt than the Valley, where it was, and maybe we'll get there someday. And as the money moves faster, maybe we will get more competitive, but there's just this sense of we're in it together. And if I can give a shout out to a group, if it's a complete nonprofit, it's an all volunteer group. So if you're interested in AI in this region, check out the AI Blueprint for Massachusetts. Just go to the website. You can come to the meetings, and it's kind of all the cool kids that are in AI, and we get together and we pick up shovels and we solve problems. So it's a really fun place. If you're just kind of new to the space and want to meet other people, like that's a really, really good place to start.